I bought this guitar down here about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago now. D'Angelico came here to the convention 1 year and set up a display, back around the corner. And they had 4 or 5 guitars, different models, and they had that one. That's the only one they brought, and it's a replica, of an EXL. It's close to like Chet's, the one that he bought in 1950 from the man up in New York, John. And I'd always had this idea about trying to rebuild one of these, using the same things that Chet would have used, or as close as I could get in modern times, And so, let's see, first I bought a pickup. This is a T.K. Smith pickup, and it's I guess a replica, or it's supposed to be an accurate reproduction of the old original Bigsby. And of course, that's what Chet had installed on his 1950 DA. And then, of course, the back pickup, that's a Gibson P90.
Yeah.
And the hard part was the vibrola. A friend of mine in Europe found this part right here and mailed it to me about a year after I bought the guitar. And I went through 2 or 3 different changes and trials and different arrangements, and finally I wound up making this piece. This is one whole piece from here back underneath all that. And I made this end piece because the original vibrola piece was only about half that tall. And I didn't think that was enough strength, for the wood back there. I thought I ought to make one bigger, and so I did. And what I did is, when I took the original D'Angelico tailpiece off, I marked the hole pattern in this homemade one, so I used the same holes, that the D'Angelico had. So I didn't weaken it anymore by drilling any more holes in it. And I would have had to have done that if I'd have used the vibrola end piece. So I fooled around with that for about a year and a half and finally got it, in a workable state. The trouble nowadays is, if you could find one from Chet's era, the early 40s, if you could find one, I don't even know if you could find one. They weren't that many sold, and if you did, the price would be more than the guitar. It's a collector's item. So
yeah.
I figured, well, I'm never going to find one of those, so I better just make the best of this reproduction stuff. And so I did. And well, this is an original Bigsby rocking bridge from the mid-60s. And if you've ever noticed Chet's guitar, you can look at pictures of it, or you go down to the Hall of Fame and look at it there through the glass. His bridge was the Bigsby metal parts, the saddle and the thumb screws and the studs. That's Bigsby, but he mounted it in a wood base of ebony, I guess. It's black looking wood, so it must be ebony or something like it. Contact the top right on the very ends of the bridge. And I didn't much care for that, and it had kind of a thin tone. So I took it to a luthier friend, and he contoured the bottom of this base to fit the curve of this top. Radiused it, I guess would be the word. And so when he got done, this thing fits all the way across now, the wood. And so after I got it back and tried it out, I thought, well, it sounds so good, I'm not going to mess with it. So if I wanted to make it look cosmetically the same, I could paint that black, you know, and that would, you know, be reminiscent of his black wood piece. I had this made by Luther in the shape of Chet's original pick guard. Although his hole here, he had cut a big hole out here so he could get to all those adjustments. And I don't really adjust things that much, so I thought it probably would be better for me if I didn't have that big hole there, you know, because your finger might slip in it. And, well, let's see, and I had a couple more inlay blocks put into the neck. D'Angelico stopped right here, and I got to looking on the picture one day, and his had a couple more pieces of pearl here. So I had that added in. And aluminum nut. That right there is what I'm working on now. I'm having a lot of trouble with the strings sticking, tuning trouble. So when I go home, I'm going to be focused on that for the next few months, trying to get it all worked out to where it don't go out of tune.
It's not that the slots are too narrow, is it?
No, they're not shaped right. The angles need to be wider in the back. And the strings are touching back here toward the back where they don't need to be touching. So what he said I need to do is just leave the front edge of this where the strings will ride.
Yeah.
And then file down.
Exactly.
From the back, so none of this, the tail end of it is not going to be in contact with the string, and that's probably a lot of the problem.
Yeah, it tends to deaden it.
Yeah, that's what he said. It's, you know, it's just cinches it up, or it sinks down into that that little groove, or you know, where it's carved out. And so I got some work to do there, and of course, I've not done a whole lot of that, so I'll probably make a mistake there and do it again. You know, that's usually how I operate. I mess it up 2 or 3 times and then finally figure out how to do it, or ask somebody how to do it.
Well, tell us about that.
This piece here?
That piece there, yeah.
Well, when I got this guitar, you know, they had 2 attachments here. One was a swivel attachment.
Right.
And the other was a solid piece that didn't swivel or nothing. You just stuck it in it, and there it was. If you needed to adjust it, you bent the metal. And it was always in a place where I wasn't comfortable, and there was not a whole lot of way to do anything about it. If you put the swivel attachment on, this part here is actually up here, and that moves this end knob right up here, and it's right in the way of everything. So if you use that, what you'd have to do is move it completely out of the way. But in order to play, you know, Chet style, it needs to be right there. And if you'll look on photographs of him playing his guitar and you notice where this knob is, it's usually right there at this back pickup where he could just slide his finger, right back there and grab it. And so I just got to thinking about it, well, what can I do? And first thing I tried was another arm using the original swivel, and that thing was so short, it was you know, it made it even harder to operate, you know, because you didn't have enough fulcrum or torque, you know.
Yeah.
So I had just gotten a lathe, a turning lathe, a little while before for my workshop, and it had a vertical milling attachment. And I think that was mostly for cutting keyways in round shafts, you know, motor shafts where you put a Woodruff key for like a pulley. But I had some pieces of aluminum and I clamped it down in the thing and started carving on it with my little lathe, and I made me one so I could move this whole thing back far enough to get this right where I wanted it, you know. And it's kind of a funny looking thing, but you know, it works. And I was playing this, and I don't remember, it might have been YouTube. I put out a video or something on YouTube, and I think it was YouTube. I may be mistaken. It's been too long now. I can't remember. But Matt Cow over in England, you know, he's a player over there. He saw it, and he sent me a message and said, "What's that thing all about right there?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, that's the same problem I'm having." And he said, "Will you make me one?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'll make you ones." Well, what I did is I took the one off of my guitar and mailed it to him, and I made me another one, you know, because he's playing everywhere and I'm just sitting at home on the couch. So it wasn't really that important to me, but yeah, I mailed him one, and he was just tickled to death, you know, to finally get that thing back.